This video is for a very narrow audience. It surprised me if there's a half a dozen people in the U.S. that would have interest in it. It would be primarily for people restoring old automobiles or people that judge restored automobiles. And what it has to do is the automotive wheel weights of the time. If you notice, these wheel weights have these little wings on them, and they have letters on both sides. There were AAs, and these are BBs, 4 BBs, and I happen to have found 4 CCs. Now these wheel weights were in use prior to 1963. I worked in a filling station in 1963, and this is all we had were A's, B's, and C's. And the way you did this, I should perhaps go out, well, I don't have a tire and wheel assembly, but if I did, I have a bubble balancer. But anyway, you'd take a bubble balancer and you would put your tire and wheel assembly on it, and you'd turn it loose to where it was floating free, and you would take first 4 A's and put them on the high side, to the side where the bubble was located, and you try to overbalance the wheel and tire assembly with 4 A's. If 4 A's wouldn't do it, you'd go to 4 B's. If 4 B's wouldn't do it, you'd go to 4 C's. Not sure what you'd do after that. Then once you overbalanced it, let's say that you put 4 B's in one place and it overbalanced it, you'd pair out the 4 wheel weights, 2 into pairs, and you would start spreading these pairs around the rim. And when the bubble on the bubble balancer got to the center, then you would take a piece of chalk and you would mark the underside of the wheel in the places that the weights were setting. And you'd lock the bubble balancer. You'd take a hammer and you would drive 2 of the, I said nail, that's what we used to call it, nail the wheel weights on. You'd drive the wheel weights on the rim where they were setting. Then you would flip the tire and wheel assembly over, and where the chalk marks are, you would nail the other 2 wheel weights. And then of course you'd put it back on the bubble balancer, and you would turn it loose and make sure that the bubble was in the center, and if it was, you'd go and put the wheel and tire assembly that had just been balanced on the automobile. So if you're judging an automobile and you want to get this, this picky with it, you would have to look for an automobile, at least an automobile that was prior to 1963. It'd have to have wheel weights with double A's, double B's, or double C's, and there would be 4 of those wheel weights, unless of course it only took 1 A or something like that, or 2 A's to balance one. On rare occasions, 1 A would actually balance a wheel and tire assembly. Now this I know firsthand, because actually there was a little training course that somebody that worked in a filling station around here had to go to. It was a Chevron station, and you'd have to be trained on this. As simple as it is, you still had to get training. Now we enter a transition period where you have a letter on one side and a weight on the other side. I can't tell you for sure when this came into effect. Perhaps someone knows and they can put it in the comments for those that are interested in this weird kind of stuff. But I would be guessing that about 1965 maybe they started going with the 1 letter and the weight. Then that would have continued on until, let me reach around here. Until about 1975, all the letters had been phased out, according to Howard Reed, who entered the wheel weight business in 1975. There were no letters, he said, on the wheel weights in 1975. Micro, by the way, is made by Beta Company. And I know, because I entered the Beta I entered Beta in 1981, May of 81, The only one of these with these wings on them, and by the way, these are what were called thin lines, and these are true thin lines in my opinion. The new weights that they call thin line are actually thicker. The cross section of the new thin lines are thicker. By 82, all of these were gone. In 81, there were some 3/4 ounce and 1/2 ounce that still had the wings on them. Now the 1/4 ounce, it never had wings. You could barely even put a lid on a clip and you got a 1/4 ounce or more. The 1/4 ounce, they never did have these wings. And these were phased out, like I said, in 81, 82. These 1 ounce would have been phased out before 81. If you are restoring an automobile and it's like prior to 81, then you should have wheel weights on with the weights on both sides and these little wings. And of course, they would have been done by the more modern, up-to-date balancers, so there wouldn't necessarily be 4 wheel weights like back in the 1960s. Now, somebody else may have more information than I've got. This kind of stuff's going to get lost if it weren't for YouTube and somebody posting this kind of stuff. It'll have very little value to anyone. My wife thinks it's quite foolish that I'd even go to the trouble to make this video, but if I don't make it, no one else makes it. This little dab of info gets lost, and some will say, well, who cares? I'll even go to something that has even less. This will have less value than what I've been talking about. Is the long wheel weights, actually longer than 3 ounces a long time ago, used to have, I think it was 6% antimony in them, so they wouldn't bend easily. Now the thicker weights, they just have the standard 3% antimony in them, but that's totally useless info. Enough said. Like I say, there might be a half a dozen people in the U.S. that even cares about this. I doubt if it applies to other countries, unless you happen to have micro wheel weights. Of course, some of them were, these were Allstate. Those are the double C's. I think I saw another name brand here, but you can see they had an insert in the mold. They were probably still made by Beta. For you half a dozen people that find use in I've got one more comment to make. Every year there's an annual Corvette meet here in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and I've got a funny feeling if you could find some new old stock with the letters on both sides, you could go up to some of those Corvette owners and sell them 4 wheel weights for a pretty penny. These are all used weights, but out there somewhere might be some old new stock, and somebody that wanted to put their Corvette to period time, that they would need 4 A's or B's or C's to balance their rim and tire assembly or meet. Somebody with say a pre-1963 Corvette. Let's see, Corvette's what started in 54. You got about 10 years there. If they wanted to get that authentic with their restoration, those people would probably pay a pretty penny for 4 of those to balance out their wheel and tire assembly. Don't know that, but they might.